Good to be here. Yay, welcome. Welcome to our nerdy RPG corner of the internet. And here is our Trello page. We're working on quests and dialogue, folks. So we are gonna work on the scene where we meet the fruits for the first time today. The scene was actually written up a long time ago, a while ago. And I think it's mostly okay. Who knows, there might be some little bits of polishing and little edits we might want to touch up on if we feel it's necessary. But mostly we're doing it so we can get it into our lore Bible. Where is our lore Bible? And also to remind ourselves what also happened in the scene, because we do need to write up the scene that follows it as well, which we haven't started yet. That was as far as we got. And, you know, once all that's done, we're sort of sorted then for dialogue for the first playable build of the game, which is only going to have main quest 1 and 2 in it out of the 6 of the episodes. So yes, as soon as we're done with the dialogue, we'll be on to implementing the scenes. Custom hero creator, I'm doing that off stream. I'll keep you updated with how that's getting on. As for other things, folks, I did get the characters in the lore Bible. So if you want to have a peek, folks, you can see what everybody looks like if you're curious. Everybody's got their tall version up now. How awesome. I think the characters look much more like their faces now. And some of the clothing isn't matching entirely on every single person. For example, Rose is not wearing a turtleneck like she is in the photo. So that will likely, you know, get the clothing part of the avatar will likely get changed to match with the clothing here eventually, but it's not priority at the moment. Those are just little touches I'll do at some point. But you know, facial feature wise, I think they're a lot more accurate to what they used to be like when it was smaller faces, because I did edit the eyes and things. Let's catch up with chat then. Hi Barb, how are you doing? Welcome back to the stream. It's good to have you here again. And I am tired, worth noticing this is proper tea, not American tea, which is just sugar. Proper tea is British tea, that's for sure. I've never had American tea before. When I've been over there a few times, but never had tea because I'm sure it wouldn't be as good as ours. That's why. And my friend puts 5 teaspoons of sugar in his tea and it becomes like syrup. Oh my goodness, 5? That's insane. See, I don't put any sugar in my coffee or my tea. I tend to think, you know, there's enough sugar and stuff as it is, so I'm not going to make myself even more healthy. And this is coming from a massive sweet tooth. This is why I say I'm trying to be good. Ooh, 1 tablespoon gang. Yeah, my parents have 1, my mum has 2 and my dad has 1, and I keep trying to convince them to drop all the sugar altogether, but they don't listen. Tea gotta taste like tea, same reason I don't use too much milk either, just a splash out. I don't have any milk in my tea. I mostly drink green tea though anyway, so you wouldn't have milk to that. Hi Van, how are you doing? It's so good to see you. And hi Sorter. Oh, you got an emoji, did you, from Azrael's sub? That's awesome. Yeah, that's a trick, guys, because if you're in stream here lurking early and somebody subs, there's less people here at the start of the stream, so you're more likely to get the emojis, more likely to unlock them. So GG, I hope you enjoy that. I want to see what those Christmas emojis look like now. I want some myself. Good morning to you too, fellow human. How are you doing, Van? How are things going on your end? How is work treating you? And Giorgio, all that Giorgio, a nice cup of tea on how to make a proper cup of tea, and it's golden. Really, I want some tips. Tell me how to make a proper cup of tea. I've always been told I make a good one, but you never know. There could be some things I don't even know. Even if you'd not already mentioned it, yeah. Okay, everyone. So, like I said, I spent all of yesterday evening getting all the character. We're going to click live boss just because Storm happens to be in chat, and Storm actually asked about the Lore Bible update. So there you go. If you wanna have a peek, you can have a nosy at all the other 34 playable characters as well, if you want to see what they look like, because I know not everybody's here walking across the screen. Only the people who are in stream are there, but there's plenty of other characters to peek at as well that haven't been properly shown yet, because I haven't posted a tweet or an Instagram of preview of any of these yet, just because of time reasons. It's already a big list of things to do, and have provided the important tea tips for you on Discord. Yay, thank you very much. But I still want to get a social media post of those tools, new revamped sprites as well on at some point on the social media when I get a bit of time. Alright everybody, so yes, I'm glad that job's done. It's a good job done. As for the other job we're doing, yes, custom hero creator, I'm going to work on that a bit more this weekend, get it a bit more polished compared to what it was on Monday when I showed you. And last stream we worked on finishing the scene, the flashback scene with the barrels. We made sure, we went over it, make sure it was all good. We did a bit the action scene, we finished that bit and put that onto the flows. And we also added a choice that wasn't there before into this following scene, that's related to a new mechanic that we've recently added to the game called the Lucky Charm. Well, that's kind of what it's best known for, the easiest name, but there's a lot of info about it. It's all in the Ideas discussion channel. There's 5 pages of info about that mechanic. Oh, thank you for the link. I will have a peek at that later for sure. And if anyone wants to see the mulled wine I made, it's in Random Snaps. I didn't take a picture of the actual wine glass at the end, no, but I've taken pictures of the process of the making of the mulled wine. Did it yesterday. It was awesome. Mulled wine is yummy. I have provided I've already read that bit, The Legend of the Tea Bender. That's a good name for a novel. It's a good title. Okay, so today, one thing we said we might add, we had some thoughts since working on the Custom Heroes stream on Monday, because your hero happens to be naked when you're in the Custom Hero Creator, because you haven't decided the class yet, that's why. So we don't know what class go on them until you pick the class. But it was funny because we did a test play of the opening scene when you meet Carol here, and obviously the hero was naked inside the barrel, and by normally that wouldn't be a thing, you'd have your clothes on by then, but because the Custom Hero Creator wasn't complete, the hero wasn't wearing anything, and it was suggested that we should actually have the scene be like that, and you're not actually wearing any clothes, and it would give more reason for Carol to insult you. But of course, if we was going to do that, we'd have to remove these two, and then perhaps add a box with something like, carrying on, something like, I'd say if you've got the long hair, Carol would say, I can't believe how long I put up with your lice-infested mane on that cart. But instead of just that, she could say, I can't believe how long I put up with your lice-infested mane and naked body on that cart. But a better insult than naked body, something more Carol-like, because naked body's not really an insult. So that's just something we could do. We could just add another insult, remove the clothing related insults and change it to something related to being in the nude. And as for the weapon, because I don't really want to put the weapon bit because it's kind of essential to find out Carol's motivation. But the weapon, whether it's an axe or a hunter's bow, it could still be inside and you could get it out, put it on your back, and then she could be like, oh wait, so that's what the pain in my bunghole was. And maybe your clothes are there, like folded up inside the barrel as well, and you get told to put them on at this point. Maybe this mysterious NPC we don't know yet could say something like, too much to drink last night, get cleaned up, put some clothes on, that could flow nicely then. But all it would add, I mean, it doesn't really change the scene at all. A few additions if we was to do that, but it wouldn't change the scene. Just a couple of extra little bits. Are you naked? We all know where this is going. The player just wearing Carol with a pair of suspenders like in an old cartoon. It was very amusing to watch. It definitely adds the comic relief to the opening scene, having the hero be completely nude. Well, I say not really completely nude, because she's still wearing underwear. I was thinking of putting a option in the options menu saying nudity on or off or something, and there could be a switch, so maybe you could be completely in the nude if you have it on in the options menu. That was just an idea, because if people ever wanted to stream the game, they'd have to have the nudity off option, because they'd probably get banned from Twitch. Maybe, I don't know how strict things are, but I think they're quite strict. But some people don't want to. It's nice. I know that Cyberpunk are doing it that way, and I think it's pretty cool to allow the option, so it can be stream safe as well. And yeah, it would definitely add the comic relief to the scene more than how it currently is. I mean, it's funny already as it is with these insults, but it just further makes it more ridiculous. And that's kind of what we want to do. We want to grab attention, don't we? We must remember that this is the opening scene, and the opening scene is where people are either gonna switch off and be like, nah, this game's a bit boring, or be like, this game's interesting, I'm gonna definitely play more of this. It either goes that way or the other way, doesn't it? Where they're either intrigued to play more, or they are not intrigued enough and they just turn it off and play another game instead. So in a way, we want to do everything we can to draw the audience in. So as soon as it was mentioned by Van on Monday's stream, I was very, very yeah, I liked it because it's funny. More chance for us to really go over the top with the Carol insults here as well. I said naked body as an insult. That's a stupid insult. We could get really descriptive with the disgusting naked body that she's grossed out by. It wouldn't ruin the scene. There was a couple of plot holes. I was like, but what about the Lucky Charm? Because you wouldn't have it if you were naked. You wouldn't have it in your pocket. But that's fine because the clothes can still be there, just folded up, So technically the Lucky Charm would still be in the folded up clothes' pocket, and the weapon, of course, that'd still be in there. We wouldn't know the background of why the hero is not wearing anything, but we could write up some scenarios together and see what's a possibility for their backstory there, if we still keep it vague, because they're a blank slate hero. So we're kind of keeping their backstory vague, but it's nice to still have some detail there as well, in a way. I think the completely nude is a great idea, and Carol can make all sorts of comments. I know it is a bit irresistible, because any opportunity to think of more silly dialogues is funny. Also, I did want to add here as well, I'm going to add no hair to this, because we recently decided on Monday's stream that we're going to add bald as a hairstyle. We didn't have bald as a hairstyle before because we used a static sprite hero creator, which meant that we'd have to have made so many more assets of bald heroes, and it would have just been an insane amount of work. But now I'm using a composite layered character creator plugin, which is a plugin that was never officially released, and the creator did warn me that it's not finalised and it has been abandoned, the plugin. So they basically told me my work's cut out for me, but I spent a whole weekend and a little bit more messing about, and it works. There's a couple of limitations with it, which mean that there's certain things about the game that are going to limit us, but the sacrifices are worth it for the better hero creator. And to be honest, the limitations actually kind of make the game a little bit better in a way. The limitation, just to make it clear, was the fact that we can only have one save at a time, because the composite layer, how it works, it updates the hero dynamically on the file, the Act 1 file. So of course, if you had multiple saves, it would overwrite your previous hero and then you'd lose your heroes. So that is the one drawback. But then I thought, actually, because this is a choice matter game, it makes the choices have more weight that way, that there's only one save. And of course, you know, I'm thinking of rewarding with a new game plus sort of element for people that want to do other playthroughs afterwards. But basically, I'm okay with it, and I'm like, this is fine, and this is all going very, very ideally, to be honest. So I'm happy that I got that hero creator working, and we can add bald to the list. And so that I figured that bald insult would match with the short hair one in a way, unless there's another insult for being bald, but that fits too. So another stupid bot, yeah. I ramble on too much to even notice that they're there. But they're not that, it's not like they're harmful, they're just annoying, aren't they? And Carol can describe such things to the potential love interest of the hero, like say the hero falls for one of the other characters. She can tell the potential all about the first time meeting the hero. Yeah, like this is stuff that can be funny later on and be brought up in conversation. It's kind of irresistible in a way, and I just like that Carol can hold that against you. Like, she can bring it up and be like, yeah, I've seen you and all that, and she'll never forget it. She'll never forget this moment. The ancient god of blood and sacrifice. Let me just steal mama. Yeah. Some Jesus looking dude showed up but naked in front of you. What a wacky story. Yeah. Well, we're not going to use Jesus all the time. In fact, when I do the custom hero upgrade, I'll probably use a different custom hero every single time, because it got to the stage where people literally thought that the protagonist of this game was Jesus. So, it's probably good to show off lots of different hero types. And so Carol gets to be your parents at high school graduation party. Carol gets to be our parents. Hi, love RPGs. Hi, Paper Chronicle. How you doing? And welcome back to the streaming stable as well. I hope you're doing good. Howdy, fellow human. How are things, everyone? Is everyone having a nice Friday? So yes, just to remind anyone coming in, we're just giving a little polish of some of our main quest 1 and 2 scenes. That's been kind of what we've been working on lately. There's opportunities for hilarious moments to just make it more funny, so we're gonna do it. And does anybody, I'm going to make a little list if there's a few ideas here, but does anyone have a really good descriptive insult of a naked body, because we've got the descriptive insults going here. We've got mushroom-ridden beard, lies infested mane, rancid flaky scalp. Carol's really getting, she's brutal, she's savage with the insults, but we need one for a naked body. I could probably think of some if I rack my brain a bit, but I'm curious, because we're going to add it. We're going to add it to this here. And I want to make a game too. You totally should. What sort of game do you think you'd make, Paper Chronicle? Not something you hear every day. Yeah, for Storm is right. RPG Maker, if you want to make an RPG and you don't have previous dev experience, then RPG Maker is probably the one I'd recommend. It all depends on what sort of game you're trying to make, really, what genre, because different tools, different engines fit for different games. And I can tell you there is at least one game where I received the message you killed Jesus after shooting him with lasers. Oh really? What a game was that? To make more complicated stuff you would need scripting or plugins. For sure, you can break RPG Maker if you try hard, but it can be a challenge because the engine itself is pretty much set in stone and not entirely flexible, but nothing's impossible. You know, I try to break it sometimes. Hi Timmy, how you doing? It's good to see you. Welcome back. How are things? Jesus faked his death just to play some games. I love how Jesus has taken over the stream now. And oh God, I've seen the face of Satan himself. Oh wow, you guys are funny. Okay, so I'm trying to think from the perspective of a prude, because Carol the Barrel is a prude. If she was to see a naked body, whether it be a man, a woman, or a non-binary person, she would not be happy in the slightest. Because she calls humans flashbacks, right? So she probably doesn't like flesh very much. In fact, the insult could be related to flesh. I always think the word flesh isn't very flattering. So she could be like, get your nasty flesh. Or something like that. So I can't believe how long they put up with your lice infested mane and nasty flesh on that card. I don't know if that has quite the ideal flow to it. There might be even better than that. I don't know if nasty is the best word. But you see what I'm getting at here, because we're going to be nude in the barrel for anyone who's just coming in, you see. So we're thinking from Carol's perspective here. If a nude human was inside her, she'd be like, yeah, gross. She's an angry barrel. An angry lady, and she's certainly not going to like him. We can stretch it as much as possible. What are his faults? Maybe something like that. Yeah, well, depends. I mean, our hero's kind of buff. Yeah, it all depends. And final level is a banger. What are you guys even talking about? Like, what's going on? Hideous flapping flesh bag, LOL. Hideous is a great word, I have to say. But you know, it's interesting thinking that from the perspective of a wooden being, what they think of skin. Because yeah, it's very different. And right, how goes the dialogue? Hi Zexy, how you doing? Doing good, Zexy. For Zexy and anyone who's just coming in, we are expanding on that opening scene with Carol. We'd really done a good job of like really getting those insults in recently, and we've got very descriptive with the insults, but we need an insult now for a naked person, because you're going to be nude in the barrel. Yeah, so she's going to not like that at all. So what I am going to do because we're not going to be wearing clothes anymore as the hero. I'm going to delete the clothes related insults, and I'm going to just expand. Let's get the grid up here. We'll just make these dialogue boxes a little larger so that we can fit the Nike insult in here. We've had a couple of ideas so far, but feel free to give more if you'd like, chat. The more the better. But thanks everyone. So now we need to make that box a bit bigger. But yes, the scene itself, there's only like a couple of amendments we really need to do to add this detail. But it's totally worth it for the comic relief. And it was all by accident that we thought this idea too, because it's only because we did a test play and the hero, the custom hero, happened to not just be wearing underwear at the time because we hadn't finished the custom hero changes. Okay. Funnily enough, it links very well to what's happening later, because this mysterious NPC we haven't created yet kind of laughs at us for drinking too much and tells us to get cleaned up because they interrupt us and Carol, and they see us, and it makes sense for them to react like that when we're in the nude. But don't worry everyone, we'll be putting clothes on at the end of the scene. Won't be for long. Talking about a very cute and sweet game, Pony Island. Oh, Pony Island, is that... Yeah, I was curious. I like ponies. Okay, so I can't believe how long I put up with your mushroom-ridden beard and hideous flesh. I don't want to get too like overboard and make the insult like 5 or 6 words long, especially because it's we've already got another insult here. I don't know if that's the best. I mean, it works, but I thought of flesh because, you know, flesh bag. It links to and flesh isn't flattering at all for skin. And hideous is quite a good word, an insulting word. So, hi Raidu, how you doing? Thank you so much for the 8 months. That's awesome. Thanks for the support, Raidu. Let's have some hype in chat. Did anyone get any emotes from that awesome sub there? I did. Thank you, Raidu. There's some Christmas emotes now on Twitch. Yay. Try got some toilet roll with a bow on. That is very funny. Oh my goodness. Bleeder might be an insult since skin is weak and barrels don't have yeah. You know, that's an interesting thing to mention, Zexit. Even if you know, it doesn't fit particularly for this, I think that kind of fact is good to point out anyway, because that's something we'll have to consider. You know, that the differences between barrels and humans. We've talked a bit about it in the past. The fact that barrels don't need to eat or drink because they don't have like digestive systems and organs. So they have a pretty nice life in that way. That means they probably don't poop either, right? But their life is also a little bit complicated too, because they're only made out of wood, and that's very easily breakable. It's a lot more destructible than flesh is. So, I guess. I mean, skin is weak for sure, but wood is weaker. There will need to be a quest for Rose to retrieve her a pony. Rose has a pony now. Thanks for the toilet roll, Molo. Okay. I think, you know, if there was ever a scene where a human or a humanoid character bleeds, you know, there's an opportunity there for Carol to get a bit grossed out, probably. Would Carol also be germaphobe then? All the bacteria that fleshbacks carry can't be good for her. True. And I think in a way, that's one reason she don't like it. Like, she's clearly, like, so gross. So I think that is very much what's happening here. Carol feels, you know, it's not nice that she has that flesh on her at all, because I'd say that's likely. I mean, we don't have to go crazy with the whole germaphobe thing, because Carol's got other personality traits too, but it's definitely, I think, to a degree, she probably could be. So for now, I'm going to have hideous flesh as the insult, but it's up for, you know, it's up for debate, that one. It's fine to have there for now, and I'd be happy with that there as the final one maybe, but we could potentially have better maybe. But it's all about what flows and what makes sense for this scene in particular. I mean, I suppose we got to be pretty straightforward with the insult and get to the point that it's a nude body, because otherwise we might think, what does she mean? So hideous flesh gets to the point pretty well, but we could get something that flows even better maybe. So what we do need to add here, you arrive in Lakefall. You arrive in Lakefall without any clothes on and poke your head out of a barrel. Just so we've got some context there for that. And then what happens after that? Let's get the arrows in. Is that she notices the weapon you have, because we'll have to put an action, I think, to clarify this. So what I'm going to do is grab all this. Oh no, not that. I missed one out. So we could do something like this, just because I use these boxes here to describe what the hero's doing. You or we can get a bit, you grab your weapon from the barrel, from inside the barrel. We'll move these down so it's centered. I don't think most human diseases affect wood. She has senses though, you know, like smells and things like that, and it's her space at the end of the day. So for example, lice infested mane, a flaky dandruffy scalp, and an itchy beard and things like that would probably be just a bit bothersome. Maybe seeing the humans getting germs and grim all over Oliver made you gradually get more germophobic. We had a whole stream of Carol's tragic backstories, actually. It's on a Google Doc, actually, but to simplify it, there was an event in the past that explains her dislike towards humans. It caused the death of her own parents. So, what stream was that now? It was about a week ago, I think, or it might have been just over a week. I could do with getting that backstory put up somewhere, actually, but because it's very recent, like only a week ago when we wrote it together, I haven't had the chance yet. But it's an interesting concept for sure. I think it's a good thing to think about barrels and how the world, how they survive within the world, their methods of survival, and what could affect their ability to survive as well. It's quite cool. Not the dialogue. No worries. It's good to think of plot holes and as well, of course, to be really. Although it's a fantasy story, and sometimes you can go beyond realism if you wish. That's the joy of fantasy. You know, it's still good to have a bit of realism too. Okay. I think that in regards to Carol's past that I mentioned just, what I could do is we have a Carol profile on the Law Bible. It could get added in under a heading here somewhere perhaps, or even on the timeline. Actually, it would probably make more sense on the timeline, because we have here a missing generation, you see, of question mark barrels, and I know you helped me with this timeline, Zexy. And we said, didn't we, back then, that there's a missing generation where Carol's parents would have been born, but they're not in the present day anymore, so it indicates something happened to them. And we had a couple of streams about Carol's past, and we decided to set in stone the reason why those barrels aren't around anymore and what happened to them, and it is pretty dark. And there's it's dark, but there's a real juxtaposition there as well, because the event upon which it happens is actually quite a happy scene. But it's I could get it up very briefly, actually. Carol's backstory, here we go. That's the paragraph, if anyone wants to print screen or whatever, because I'm not going to have it up on stream, of course. This is basically the gist of Carol's backstory, and one of the key reasons, one of the primary reasons why she really hates humans. And it doesn't necessarily have to be the only one, because with things like hate, deep-rooted hatred, usually sometimes there's many reasons why you hate them, not just one, because your misbelief about them is being proved to you over and over again, right, to make you so dislike it so much because it's happened so often to you. So totally agree on her just finding things gross, because she does. Humans do that. Exactly, you know, I mean, it's in the differences between them in general is one reason why she'd find them gross, but yes. And my thinking is maybe have a majority of the insults, more than half, directly tied to her tragic backstory, Tim. I think that's smart. I think the more we can trickle in to give the audience a clue, a hint on Carol, to like slowly reveal who she is without like forcing it down people's throats immediately is good, because then it can tie in, and the moment we find out about it, then it will all make sense. We're like, oh yeah, that's why she did that, that's why she reacted in that way. So I'm definitely a fan of that kind of approach. But yes, it's a scene like Lakefall, you know, a seasonal festival's happening. We already had the idea of there being a festival with loads of food, a buffet, because that was the moment that Blueberry and Tomato, the two fruit characters, lost two of their kin. A blueberry pie and tomato juice got eaten all up, and that's one reason the fruits hate humans so much, because they unknowingly consumed living fruits. And so that kind of links in with this as well. It's like a callback to the moment when the fruit said that their kin got eaten. But there's more going on than just the fruits getting eaten in this scene. The barrels, the kids are playing with the barrels that happen to be Carol's parents, but the kids don't know that these barrels are alive. So that's the key thing to realise here. They don't realise they're alive. So, did we state that here? And this was Kung and Xaver's idea, but kind of got merged together. We had a stream where we had, so everyone submitted tragic backstory ideas, and this was the one that stood out the most. And some of the others were great too, but they're probably more suitable for being a future event rather than a past event. Not realising they are alive. So for the kids, they're just having a good time, you know, kids being kids. But it's kind of really, it's awful because they're actually living, these barrels are, and unfortunately it does lead to the death of the parents. And Carol sees this and just, it scars her because she watches it happen and she sees everybody laughing, and it's just pretty horrible. So it's one reason, and like I said, it doesn't need to be the only reason why she hates humans. It's just one of many reasons, right? And I think it's one of them things. With Carol, since she's been born, she's experienced why humans suck many times. So there could be more, and I'd love to see all these little things in flashbacks. And it's an excellent idea. I like it. It interconnects things really well. Yeah. So this is the thing. If we was going to have this filter through with the opening scene, even like just very subtly, the question is how we would go about it. But, you know, this bit here is an interesting thing. The kids continue playing, standing on top of the barrels and hiding inside them. Carol doesn't like you being inside her, right? Because it probably makes her remember this, the moment the kids were inside the barrels, hiding in them. Just like now, when the hero's hiding inside her. And I guess there'd be a bit of fear there with Carol. I mean, not that she'd ever show that fear because she's stubborn and has ego and pride. But deep down, she'd be scared, really. And that's her way of lashing out. And yeah, we could totally be related to the germ thing and being grossed out. I think Carol in general is very much a prude and doesn't like being... She's not affectionate in that way. It's very much part of her character that she doesn't like romance. She doesn't like being touched. She's very prude. She's very very anti-romance, and that's why she's such an interesting romance option, because she's very not keen on that. So I think the whole germaphobe side of thing is interesting in the way that it just makes Carol more of a challenge to fall in love with, and that character arc is the contrast when we finally romance her of what she was like in the beginning would just be really strong. So it's kind of cool. But I guess the bit that stands out to me here is this bit, because that's the one thing I feel how it interconnects the most with the opening scene. And I think when we do this flashback scene, show it in the game whenever it's going to show, because it would have to show at a relevant point. I feel like, say, if there's a conversation and it kind of is very closely related to this, then it would be the time to reveal it. We won't show the flashback before it's due to be shown, but whenever we feel it's the perfect moment, then we'll craft it. And I think it'll be important to kind of put that emphasis on the hiding inside the bit them thing. Make it make it be a callback to that opening scene almost. Does she ever insult the MC while they're inside her, or is it only after they've gotten out? Right, so let's have a look again at that dialogue, folks. So let's remind ourselves how it currently goes. And I think it's like really cool so far. I think we've done a really good, decent job, but if we feel there's something missing that needs adding or altering, I'm going to be all for it, especially if it makes it stronger in the way that it ties even more to Carol and all these important things like backstories, misbeliefs, and fears and desires and all those things, because those are really the most important things about characters, because it's the internal goings on. And that's the way we get attached to characters. So the earlier we show that off, the better. And it's all about, not spelling it out either too strongly. I guess it's about trickling it through the dialogue subtly. That's kind of, in a way, we were starting to do that. Like, we're giving hints of what her actual external goal is about finding her family. The fact that she's saying, she could do with a weapon. By the way, folks, you can actually read these scenes on the Law Bible just as a reminder. Because I know it's not easy to look while I'm streaming, because I'm only showing a portion of the screen at one time. So if anyone who is keen wants to actually have a closer and more detailed look. Hi Rod, how you doing? I'm Nungi, how are things? We have the dialogue trees right here. And it's super zoomed out by default, because I'm not sure if there's even a way to have it like that. I'd love it to kind of already be zoomed in at that level, but I don't think it lets me, so you'll have to zoom in yourselves. But this updates in real time, folks. This embed does as I do it, so feel free to have a look at that if you ever want to have a close look, guys. But yeah, so this scene has been greatly expanded since how it was in the beginning, because now we're having the goal was really to give a real reason to the player why Carol's even coming on this adventure with us as the hero in the first place. Considering she hates humans so much, why would she do that? Why would she go with us and be our inventory? And we kind of really fleshed out that reason, and it's all because she cannot do this on her own. She is a barrel, she can't fight, she can't find her family alone. She's probably been trying for a few weeks already. No luck. She's also secretly fearful of the dangers that lie ahead of her, so she wants a bodyguard. She ideally wants somebody to be her little sidekick who has a weapon. So she eyes up that weapon, and first she's like, yeah, that's she mentions it and again insults the hero, but then realizes that she could do with one of those, but she can't use that herself. She hasn't got hands. So she's kind of latching on to the fact that she could do with this hero. So then when she runs into us later, when she purposely follows us, it all makes sense to us as the player why she is following us, because she's got her reasons. But another addition we added was an NPC finding us and being like, what's all this ruckus over here? Because before, originally the scene just ended randomly. But I wanted to show the choices and consequences super early on, so you have a chance to grass Carol up, which will most of all affect the way she speaks to you. And she will be frigging savage to you if you grassed her up. And this goes even further than that. You can change your mind when the NPC threatens to smash the barrel. The reason why the NPC wants to smash a barrel is because things are coming alive in the forest, so there's a lot of fear there, and we wanted to really make that apparent as soon as possible, that the fear of the Lakefall villagers, of what's happening in this village. And that's kind of the clue. After all the horrifying stories I've heard about the forest lately, that wouldn't surprise me. And this fear of things being alive, that concept has been introduced. And yeah, as early as possible was the key. Because they could have found that out by talking to NPCs in Lakefall optionally, but not everyone's going to talk to the NPCs. So having it as an actual scene was key. But you can back out and be like, no, don't do it. But you can also be an absolute ass, and yeah. But obviously she doesn't get killed off, because she can't, not at this stage of the game anyway, so he gets interrupted. But yeah, that's how that scene unfolds now, and it obviously leads later on to Carol stopping you and joining the party, which is a pretty long scene, folks. So if you want to see how it all goes, it's there. The moment Carol offers to be your inventory, she has to do some convincing though. Okay, so hi, did I say hi, Rod? I can't remember if I did. Has your week been a good one, and do you have any plans for the weekend aside from staying warm? This weekend, I think I'm cooking dinner on Saturday, so that's one thing I'm doing. And how about you, Rod? What are you doing? If she ends up humiliated, would that be embarrassment? That's a good one, embarrassment. I feel like I need to say that somewhere. Feel free to ignore the suggestion. What about if she's quite deadly when someone is inside her? It reminds her so much of her parents getting smashed that she just can't bring herself to make any noise. But once she gets out, she snaps out of it, starts insulting you, telling you to never do that again. And anytime someone is inside her, she reverts to terrified, quite interesting. So at the moment, let's just remind ourselves how it's happening. At the moment, she slams you when you're inside her, but Zex's suggestion is to do the insulting afterwards, after we've already got out of it. But that's just like a little tiny amendment, you know, it's just a difference in character movement. So either, you know, it's as it is, you're in her and she throws you out herself, or you get out yourself and then she opens her eyes. I guess the question is, what's going to have the most impact for us as the audience watching the scene? Because this is Carol's introduction moment, you say, so it has to be wow, you know, has to be that a shocker, because this is the moment we find out a barrel is alive. And some people might already know that from looking at all the pictures and that, but you know, it's still it's a pretty important scene because it's that moment we're finding out she's alive. And there's something, whatever, I think either way works fine, because it's always a shock to find, to see a barrel actually that's got eyes just suddenly appear. But this current way that we're doing it, she gets violent, so it's a way of showing Carol's violence off very soon. So, but going to be going as well, but wanted to make sure you were right and wish you a good weekend. Take care and stay warm, safe until next time. Take care, Rod, and thanks for the pun. Embarrassment. Okay. And I'm going to get up the scene cards, folks, because we're getting really deep into scene discussion here and character internal thoughts. So it's the perfect time to bring up the scene cards, guys, because this is what all this is for. So right now, this is what it reads as so far. The very opening scene. So Carol meets you. Scene 1. So the main plot, it's the moment Carol the Barrel, the story's most intriguing character, is introduced. So the subplot is that, you know, where you are hiding in a barrel for some reason. You know, we don't know why, but it's still a question. And the villagers show their fear of how dangerous the forest has become, which has also been shown because we kind of show that threat from the NPC when they interrupt us, that they're scared of the things that are coming to life, and that's ultimately what leads them to want to smash the barrel. I'm guessing the flashback scene, well, I'm pretty sure this was before they were all aware that things were alive, you know. This was probably you know, a month or two before, probably around Oliver's birth maybe, so it wouldn't have been too recent. It can't be too recent for the reason that the parents have been dead for a reasonable amount of time, because they weren't in the flashback when the barrels went missing. But yeah, so what happens is, the external stuff is that Carol gives you a wallet because you were inside her for way too long and she feels violated. I think, you know, that's like the very surface level description of what we can say. But the stuff that's happening internally, why she does it, is because there was an incident in Carol's past where humans caused the death of her parents. She reacts aggressively towards you because she feels unsafe. So going on what Zexy said, that's kind of what's happening, but I am very interested in what people's thoughts are of that, and if there's even more layers to potentially add to this, which I think we're sort of getting at with our current conversation, which is why I brought up the scene card, so you can see what it says right now. And we also have a villager nearby, hears shouting and asks what is going on, and that's because that's the consequence of what happens, because of course Carol's loud. She's a very loud person, lots of yelling, so naturally someone would overhear that, and that really is the consequence. So Carol realises she needs to be careful because there are a lot of humans in this village that might harm her. And so Carol understands it's best she hides herself and not appear under any circumstances, which is shown here in a very, very brief way. She just panics and hides immediately as soon as the human appears. And what we would probably do there in the scene is have her facial expression, her eyes get a bit larger, pop out of her head even, and then her face would just disappear and she'd kind of turn into she'd pretend that she was a non-sentient barrel. And that would be the clue into this, of course. But all this stuff in the black boxes, of course, is happening internally, and we have to do our best to show it in the scene, but not tell, if that makes sense. So it's about revealing this in a way where we're not spelling it out here. So interesting stuff, guys. So thanks for your thoughts. And I think I'd like to still talk more about that, because I think it's a really interesting thing to consider, and what actually genuinely works best for Carol as a character. Because we could take Carol many ways. She's still very much in early development as a character, and she's very layered already, but there's so much more to her. So it's going to be really interesting to think about Carol, and some of her more vulnerable sides, because one thing we do know, she's got to have vulnerabilities and fears. Everybody does. She's got an ego and pride, and she doesn't show it and would never admit to it, but it's still happening within her. And we've started making, little cards about, their personality and common phrases and where they fall on the moral scale. I've done that for all the barrel characters. This is going to be something I do for every NPC in the game, so that we can always refer to this while doing dialogue and keep consistent with their voice. And I've got the personality type for Carol there. We need to think of what the others are too at some point. And I'll try to write up my thoughts on Discord as something semi-coherent. Yeah, and it can be a challenge to write detailed stuff in chat, that's for sure, on Twitch. So feel free to expand on it in the ideas section if you'd like, Zaxi. That's for sure. But whatever way we go, whether we decide that she's gonna, whether the hero's going to be out of her before she speaks, or the way things currently are, that's such a small change that it wouldn't really be too much hard work to just amend slightly. And it's all about what's going to fit best and what's going to make more sense, because even those small changes and small details matter. I've got the opinion that every single moment in a scene needs to be there for a reason and be consistent with what we're doing. So where were we? You grab your weapon from inside the barrel, and that's the moment. We'll probably see it. We'll probably grab it, and she'll look at the weapon, and she's going to react to it. She's going to realise that was what the pain in her bunghole was. We liked the word bunghole because not only is it a barrel part, it sounds like bumhole, so it's like a double meaning. And it kind of clues us in that barrels feel pain. So if you were to put an item in a barrel, they react to that. It's kind of all a concept. We've decided we're very keen on the concept of barrels being affected by what's inside them. So another thing would be herbs. Carol would get a bit high if there was too many herbs inside her. They could get drunk if there's alcohol inside them. And they would feel pain if there was something sharp inside them. And there's so many more things and ways that could be affected potentially for what's inside them. And although they have a base core personality, it's not going to change their personality, but it is going to have an effect on them, what's inside them. And so she's about to say, they could help me find my family, but she gets interrupted, so it's a way for us to not find out too fast as the player what she's trying to find, but it's enough to make us think, oh, what's she after? What's she looking for? But we don't find out yet. And then we have the choices, and so obviously now, because we've added the naked thing, we've got to add we could maybe stinking is a better word. Stinking flesh. What do you think? Because flesh is a bit smelly, isn't it? I mean, BO and stuff. I feel like stinking would make more sense, only because of the senses. Carol's offended by the smells and that, like we said, she's a prude. I mean, germaphobe was mentioned, but I think it's more likely it links to her being a prude. I don't know whether the other barrels, for example, Meryl, Hank or Elvira, would be quite as bothered. There might be. I mean, Elvira's a bit prudy herself, but I don't think Hank would mind so much. He seems like a lovely laid-back barrel. Hank would like to be our... Someone had an idea that a homeless man used to live in Hank. That would be quite wholesome, I think, if a homeless person lived in Hank. I think Hank could be a lovely friend to a homeless person. Rancid, or maybe some strong sin, So any words that are similar to stinking, like that could work. So hideous was a great word. I love the word hideous because it's a very strong word. But I was thinking, we could go for something that was more to do with smells and being offended by smelly BOE flesh. So those two words are good as well. Zaxy sodas, but all about what got the better flow. And what sounds best in the sentence. Let's look at some other similar words. And it's about Carol as well, because as we said, she's very blunt with her language. She doesn't hold back. She's not the most articulate or poetic with her words, but she's definitely blunt and very harsh. Flesh sack. So I want to avoid getting too wordy. I mean, I love the descriptions, but because we've already got a descriptive adjective here, she could sound a little bit too like flowy and poetic with the words if we get too much. So the stinking rash is good because it's brief. But I'm trying to think of Carol because putrid is a great word. I've even pronounced that right, but that might fit better for a more posher character like Nigel Buckington, maybe, because we have like their cards now for their tone of voice. We haven't got Nigel or Fiona here yet, but they will be here. And we know that Carol's definitely the one for the harsh nicknames and the blunt insults and expressions. But she's not exactly, she doesn't have like the world's most advanced vocabulary. So it's just thinking that I just want to make sure we don't go for any words that are too beyond her vocabulary levels. Because although she's brilliant with her insults, and fair enough, I type preferred you, no worries, Zexy. I mean, those are great words, I love them, but I'm also being very strict with tones of voices and that, and we could totally use some of those for other characters, like I said, Nigel Buckington. I could totally imagine him being like that putrid smell, like, because he's a bit more of an upper class gentleman type of persona. So but we'll keep it for stinking for now. I mean, feel free to still suggest stuff, chat, because it doesn't mean it'll stay as stinking forever. I might have a change of heart and be like, actually, that word's far more Carol-like. And any words that do get mentioned, even if they don't fit for Carol, they'll probably get put into other NPCs' common phrases and that, who probably suit them even more. Okay, so Now, this is where we're still nude at this part then. But this could be the point where get cleaned up and put some clothes on. So just that extra bit. Get to work and put some clothes on. So, got to make sure we've got that in all the branches. Since I've made the sprites taller, it's hard to fit them on in the boxes. But we'll manage. Let's put them up a bit higher so they're not covering up the text. That's a tough one now. So I don't want to resize them because they look. Might have to though. I don't want to though. Because then it will ruin the sizes of all the barrels and the fruits, because we'd have to do them smaller too. We'll just keep it like that for now. I'm not going to force. I'll mess about with the sizing later. So it could be there all day. Okay, so get to work and put some clothes on. We need you to keep us safe today. So this is all just setting up the setting. You know, we're a hunter or a warrior. And we're there as sort of village protectors in a way, but we're kind of lucky because this guy has just assumed that that's what we are. We are that, but we've probably never actually been to Lakefall before, but he just assumes that we're one of the many hunters and warriors keeping the villagers safe. So that's kind of our job that we've been assigned to do. So get to work, put some clothes on. Yeah, we got those on, all of them. So I think that rounds off the scene nicely. We've kind of we have the nude hero now, but we'll have their clothes off at the side in a bunch. Perhaps I'll do an asset that when we're out the barrel, that and the weapon can be at the side or something, and we just grab them both and put them both on. You grab your weapon from inside the barrel and so you grab your weapon from inside the barrel and put it on your back. I think we need to state that we do that so we can get it equipped. But we also need to just finish the scene off here now and say something like, you pick up your clothes on the ground and put them on. So that's prepared then. Once we've done that, the scene's free for us to walk round at that point, I'd say. And I don't think there's anything like huge that we haven't covered. But if anything is missing, we'll soon know when we make the scene. But yes. Let's not forget that the dialogue trees are constantly, you know, potentially altered and touched up over time. Like this is like a third or something draft for this now, but between playable builds, people might notice things and that need some amendments doing. So that's why I like doing them. That's why I like recording these dialogue trees, because it's so much easier to sort of organise it all and know what you need to change, and rather than if you just had it all in the editor. It'd be a bit chaotic that way for me anyway. So I think that scene's at a good state now. We have the Nigel Buckington scene. I've still got to change Nigel's sprite to a tall one because I haven't done him yet. Fiona's a child, so she doesn't need another sprite. I've changed Rosie's to the tall one, huzzah. Okay, so as for the other scenes that we haven't really touched upon, we've kind of left. The one with Nigel and Fiona, for example, we haven't really looked at them and made any additions, but I've still got to do the scene cards for them. And you never know, there could be some internal stuff I uncover when writing the scene cards for those scenes. And if I do uncover anything, then of course I'll make sure it's reflected in the dialogue. But I feel like scene 1 and scene 3, since we've filled out the scene cards, we've done a really good job of expanding on those particular scenes and making sure that anything's made clear, because beforehand we did have the odd person or two say, why would Carol go with the hero if she hates humans, which is a very good question. But since we've expanded on the scene, there's just so much backing up that reason now. So that's the one good thing about uncovering all that, so everything makes sense. Now we've covered that, because I did want to make sure we did that today, because that was something on the agenda, adding that little extra detail to the opening scene. We can do what my Discord live announcement said, which is work on the fruit scene. Well, I've already done it, but we got to get it back in and review it, talk about the fruits as we do it as well, chat about them as characters and their interactions with the others and how the scene all unfolds, any plot holes, any things like that. So where were we? Here we are. So this was scene 3. Don't forget, again, you can follow this on the Lore Bible, guys. Everything is going in there. That's one of the reasons why we're going through these scenes again, so we can get them in the Lore Bible at the same time as going over it all. So, honestly, you going over what I have in the last 20 minutes has answered like half dozen questions I've had about Carol's motives. Yeah, and always throw them at me. Like, if anyone here has questions, even if it's not on stream, throw them in the ideas discussion channel or at any time, because it's all fascinating stuff, and stuff that even makes me realise things and be like, oh, like, yeah, that. And then when something springs to mind, it's a lot easier to write it as good as it can be, because even for the inn scene, for example, and the lake and the cabin scene, the ones that we haven't done the scene cards for yet, there could be, for all I know, a ton of questions that need answering there as well that I haven't yet unearthed myself. But it's funny, because when you actually have those questions, then it's so much easier to fill the scene cards in. Like you said, Zexy, when you came in, you was like, what's Carol's reason for being racist? Just that question has filled in all of this, in a way. And really just helped give Carol a purpose for why she's even coming along as well, because it is weird. You'd think, well, why would she want to go on an adventure with someone who's so dangerous, who's potentially dangerous, should I say, because she's seen what humans are like and what the kind of things they do. I mean, a lot of the humans have done it not on purpose, because they've not even known the barrels are alive in the incident involving a parent's death. But there has also been incidents when they wanted to purposely kill the barrels out of their own fear, more recently, since they've found out about things coming to life. they've freaked out, people have, and they've started smashing probably objects for no apparent reason. You know, because they're scared. They think, oh, if things are coming to life, they might kill us, so we're going to have to kill every object in sight. And Carol sort of sees that as cruelty and, you know, dangerous, awful people. But, you know, it's not necessarily that way from the human's perspective. You know, they're not all evil, and we could think, yeah, God, humans are awful in this game, but it's not that black and white. And there could be some awful humans that are like, who cares? I don't care that there's a living barrel here, just kill it. There could be some people like that. But there could also be some people that are mortified when they find out what they've done. And they'll be like, I can't believe I did that. So there's multiple sort of ways people are going to react to all this. And Carol's definitely got some lessons to learn in this journey, because she's definitely you know, her reasons for the hatred are definitely warranted, and you can sympathise and relate and agree, but it's still a flawed way of thinking as well, because she's sort of brandishing every human, tarnishing them all with the same brush. So, you know, she might figure out some things in this journey, that's for sure. So, like, I was going to ask, why are barrels quiet around people but not the hero? But you 100% answered that, yeah. So Carol's flashback definitely does as well. And, you know, they're scared of their own lives, really, to put it simply, because naturally, as we know, I mean, it's the main premise of the whole episode, that things are coming to life from the spell. Which at this point in time we don't know the reason for the spell. We don't know that Chub Cheeks is behind it or anything like that, or that they're used for the purpose of gathering raindrops for money. All that lore information that we talked about is all a big question mark at this point. The only thing we are going to know is that things are coming to life. We don't know the ins and outs, but we know that things are coming to life, and that naturally would freak people out. And the barrels, unfortunately, are part of the problem, because they're things that shouldn't be here in this world. And it's kind of unfortunate, because the barrels are good folk, you know, they're a nice little family, but there are some evil in things in the that have been created as well, like the Father Maple, for example, being one of those. But then you have to ask yourself, do the mushrooms and toxic plants and flowers in the forest that you kill in battle, is it fair that you're killing them? And I think that's an interesting concept as well, because you are killing things for CP, for progression in the game and battles, that you kind of maybe haven't questioned if it's right to kill those things. And maybe it feels like you should, because it's self-defense. They are kind of a bit vicious, so maybe they do deserve it, but still. Naughty Chub Cheeks, indeed. Naughty Chub Cheeks. But yes, as for what you said, Exy, about questions, I welcome them all to be thrown at me, because even myself, I'm one human being. There's probably many things I haven't even realised myself that people are thinking about. So the more people throw questions, the more the story's going to be better. I kind of see it like that, because it's an opportunity for me to sort of look at those questions and flesh it out even more. But yeah, like, you know, once upon a time, Zexo, a month or so ago, those questions weren't fleshed out at all, because the opening scene and the introduction of Carol when she joins the party as the inventory, as it always was from the beginning, it was just very basic and surface level stuff. We only had it there because that was what won the poll, and it was funny. right? That was the only reason we had it there. But since then, I've got very passionate about this project. I actually want it to be a good story. It's more than just a bit of fun now. So I was like, yeah, let's actually really develop Carol and make it really good. So since wanting to do that, that was what really inspired the expansion of these scenes, because I want to approach it like a proper story now. And hi Alice, how are you doing? Have you changed your name again, Alice? You Alice costume, weren't you? How you doing? I hope you're having a fantastic Friday. Are you excited for Cyberpunk? How are things on your end? Oh yeah, ha ha ha. Alright, so, wow, we are late with beginning this fruit scene today because we've been chatting so much about Carol and the hero, but it's all worth it because it's such good stuff. Like, I love these talks, like the stories talking bits are my favourite bits. So, we're going to rename this to Scene 4. What did we call it on the Trello? Meeting the Fruits is the name of the scene. I'm so excited about Cyberpunk. Hope the snow doesn't delay delivery. Oh, yeah, I was thinking of getting it digitally this time. I was tempted to get it, get it posted, but I'm paranoid it's not going to get to me. So yes. Hopefully it doesn't. That would be gutting. I want to see a character as well. You have to put a tweet or something showing your Cyberpunk character. I want to see everybody's. I'm going to be posting mine. Alright. Got so many tabs open here. I'm going to cross that one off. I'll cross Carol's backstory off now. If anyone wants to see it, the VOD's there. Scene cards. I think we already did it for Scene 4, funnily enough. We've not done it for the others, but we did it for Scene 4, and that's because Scene 4's very, very detailed. There's a lot of layers and a lot of things happening in Scene 4, so I filled in the scene card. But this is quite an old one. I filled this out a long time ago, so there might even need to be updates to this now with the fruits. There could be more things in here that I haven't even thought about, which we can uncover today. Pardon me, I'm getting the burps. Will you make it look like yourself or completely different? Yeah, I'm going to post a photo of mine on Twitter. I'm thinking of doing a Cyberpunk Rose. Basically me, but Cyberpunk version of me. But I'm going to be playing as Corp, you see. I've decided I want to be a Corp. So I'll probably look pretty dapper, right? Because the style of Corp is very dapper. Which one are you going to play, Alice? And I'm not really into Cyberpunk. Guess it's because I'm too much for doing the setting. Haven't been big in sci-fi cyber type games. Yeah, some people aren't. Like I've talked to a few people that absolutely loved The Witcher, but they're not as interested in Cyberpunk because they're more fantasy people, and so be it. It's not. I wouldn't entirely say Cyberpunk's a genre I'm mad about either, but I just really love The Witcher, and I really think, it's one of the modern RPGs that actually went all out. So it makes me very confident in the dev team to pull off a very ambitious RPG once again. The Witcher was made in 2015, so imagine what they can create now if that was that back then. It's still very ahead for its time, even now, even though the game's 5 years old. So, yeah, I'm definitely, having a lot of trust in the devs, because there's a lot of things they've done that, you know, are very out my comfort zone. It's a first-person shooter game, for example, and I don't even play first-person shooters. There's only a handful of games I've ever played that are first-person, but you know, I trust the dev team. And love Blade Runner. It's my favourite film, so very excited for this. Yeah, for sure. Like, sci-fi isn't common enough in games, I don't think. I can't even think of any sci-fi RPGs other than Deus Ex, or any more other than that. So you know, it's definitely a good thing. I think that there's a sci-fi RPG for once. There's a lot of fantasy ones, so it's nice, it's different. I don't play shooters either, yeah. So I'm nervous because of that, but I've always enjoyed, when I have liked a first-person game, it's always had other elements other than big shooter elements, such as a good story or RPG elements like Borderlands or Half-Life 2 or something like that, which are just first-person games. Another one's BioShock, which I never really played, but that's a first-person game that's actually meant to be good. So, you know, they're not all bad. People get really set in their ways, I feel, and they're like obsessed with third person because that's the norm. Well, that's kind of the norm usually. But you kind of have to see why they'd go first person as well, and it kind of does make sense for immersion reasons to do that as well. Hi Dava, how you doing? Hoping it's a bit like Fallout though, where you can boost hacking, talking skills and see more of that side of the game. Yeah, who knows? I think it seems to be one of them games that are really going all out. Like, so, you know. And meaning to play Mass Effect for ages. I would say Mass Effect is a sci-fi RPG. Hi, Bird Lover. Yeah, Mass Effect is one of my favourites. The whole trilogy, actually. It's... When I think of Mass Effect, I don't even think of it as a shooter, because to me, I didn't really play it for the gameplay at all. I don't even remember the gameplay of Mass Effect. I played it because of the world and the amazing characters, because one game that really, really kicks butt when it comes to world building and characters is Mass Effect. I don't even remember the gameplay. Not that the gameplay was bad, it didn't stand out to me. It was all about the world with that game. And Nier is also sci-fi, yeah. It's an experience. I'll probably watch Kokan's play and see if it appeals anyway. You never know, Van. I think sometimes certain things can make you go out your comfort zone and surprise you. You know, maybe Cyberpunk can be the game that wins people over. I'm going to try and stream Cyberpunk, but we will see. You should. Hi Kid Dold, how's it going? It's good to see you. Hope you're good. But yes, now you think about it, there are more science fiction RPGs out there than you think, but I think Cyberpunk's probably very different to those. I think it's probably more like a Deus Ex one than a Nier one. I didn't even think of Nier as a comparison to Cyberpunk, but it's still sci-fi RPG for sure. And 1 week till Cyberpunk, I know, right? We're talking about it because Alice came in, and I know that Alice is excited for Cyberpunk, so we got on the topic. Make sure everyone shares their photos of their characters, okay? That's what I'm saying. Okay. So we'll refer to this scene card while we add the fruit scene. I'm going to have to get up the old dialogue thingy. Where I have it. Here it is. I was wondering where it was because I've got so many different documents. But we did this fruit scene a long time ago, but it's a bit messy. There's a lot of notes on here because we were like brainstorming things together. But the job is going to be to get all these dialogue boxes onto our new document, because we need to embed it into the Law Bible. That's one reason, and the other is so we can review it and do another draft potentially. Even though I think the scene itself worked quite well, you never know, there could be some things we need to go over. I need to also remind myself of what goes down in that scene so that we can effectively write the scene that follows it, which is the furthest we've got. Hell, one could argue that Phantasy Star is a sci-fi RPG series. Yeah, RPG is such a broad genre though, isn't it? Because so many that are different. Like some are more linear and very focused story experiences, like Final Fantasy, for example, with a set protagonist, and others are very much RPGs where you can mould things yourself, and you've got JRPG and Western, which have completely different feels to each other as well. But in regards to Cyberpunk, I guess there's not really anything that's really doing what Cyberpunk's done. Like when you think of anything you can compare it to, there's not really. It's kind of a struggle because it really is next gen, I feel. One could also argue that Final Fantasy VII is more sci-fi than anything. Yeah, and 8 in a certain way as well, right? I mean, that had time travel elements in it and everything in the end. And it was just modern day at the start. 9 went back to being more medieval. And 10 is like a mishmash of futuristic and tribal and stuff as well. There's Zanarkand as futuristic, but then Tidus gets taken to this land that's very different from Zanarkand. So yeah, Final Fantasy really do the mix of fantasy and sci-fi, don't they? Earthbound is more urban fantasy than sci-fi, despite the robots and UFOs. Yeah, see, this is why fantasy is such a great genre, folks, because you can go really wild with the themes. You can say it's a medieval fantasy, but then have things in it that are like really bizarre and out there as well. And I think that's why fantasy is my favourite genre, or fantasy and sci-fi, because there's no limits to your imagination with what you can have. FF, Borderlands, Mad Dad, Fallout are all exactly Kindle. They're all so different. So you know, it all depends. You know what sort of RPG you want to play. I think they're all good in their own ways. It depends what strikes the mood for me. Every game is an adventure. I suppose it depends on how one defines RPG. Things like leveling up and skill trees have pervaded gaming in general. Yeah, and then you could basically say every game's an RPG in that regard. But to me, an RPG is a game where you really are living a character's role, and you are living that experience with them and that world. For me, it's like complete immersion and storytelling, but in a way where I guess the whole leveling aspect is part of it, but it's so much more than just that. In fact, I'd say Cyberpunk, like with what I've heard, that really defines what an RPG is to the highest level, because it seems like there's so much depth in that game. Just as every game can be a strategy game or a sim, Undertale is an RPG, but you don't get level up or get skills. Yeah, because Undertale, there's branches and choices with the routes you can go down with that character you're playing as. You get to define your playthrough and what you do with those characters along the way, which to me is very much RPG. You know, even if no battles even exist or no skills exist, it's all about moulding a character, I suppose. And then I guess you've got linear RPGs like Final Fantasy, where you don't really mould them, but you mould them in another way, like with the skills and battles. Obviously, important aspect of RPG. I've run a tabletop game where no dice rolling or other random determination exist in the system. Yeah, I think, like, you know, your tabletop games, like, they really are traditionally what RPGs are. And I think certain games, video games, are more inspired by tabletop RPGs than others. And they're really the true RPGs. Undertale is also a deconstruction of the classic RPG, so it does weird things for the sake of being weird. Yeah, Undertale really turned a lot of things on its head, and that's what makes that game really special and stand out. Are all the Game Maker Retro 8-bit games RPGs? What defines FF5 as RPG, but not these other games in that style? Yeah, that's an interesting question. I'm trying to remember Final Fantasy V, because I'm less knowledgeable of the very earlier Final Fantasies than I am the PS1 onwards ones. Hi Rose, how are you? Where are your manners? Hi Dave. I figured you just made yourself at home, but that's what everyone should do here. That's what I like to see, you guys making yourself at home. It is roll, so no fixed mechanics are actually required to make an RPG. Right, so I'm gonna cross off that one now, because we want to get rid of some of the tabs. And to make things easier, I'll put that tab there. Cool. I might make some character profiles of the fruits, like I have the barrels as well. So we'll start doing that. And the way I've formatted the new dialogue trees is very different to the old way. So I'm using different colour schemes and fonts now, and I've got to rewrite it all rather than copy and paste, which is fine by me because it helps me learn the scene better. You arrive at the heart of Everbloom Forest. Painter's easel stands in the centre. This is a super long scene, this one is, but once it's done, that's officially the furthest we've got, so no more dialogue after that point. Final scene, but we are going to start writing scene 5 next week, early next week, so that'll be fun because it's a brand new scene. But then we won't be doing really any dialogue at all until we start the second playable build. Genre is mostly just a marketing tool. It doesn't really serve individual games to fit them into predefined boxes. Yeah, and I'm kind of glad there's now predefined boxes, because that's what makes things interesting, that every game's different, and lots of RPGs are different. It would be very limiting and boring if every game RPG was the same. And discussing RPG video games or role-playing games in general, and whether that distinction is important. And computer RPGs are more inspired specifically by early AD&D, which is self-care from wargaming, which is ultimately why they are so combat-focused with such impotent social systems. Yeah. There we go. In what way make your case? Sorry about being late seeing that, folks. Sometimes I don't always notice things in chat, but they're gone now. Are all computer video games RPGs shackled to that early inspiration? No, that was 40 years ago. We could move on from that, surely. Yeah. Things are always changing in a way, but it's nice to see that there's many different types of RPGs, because then you got choice and variety, haven't you? And that's what's so good. And I love them all in different ways. It all depends what mood I'm in, really, and what I fancy playing. Okay. Let's get this dialogue in. I'm going to just copy Carol's boxes, because it's just easier that way, because we've already got all the info in. I'm probably going to get more specific about character movements and actions, though, in the update of this draft, rather than just have it be nothing but text, because I have started to do italics and slightly lighter text to show movement and actions, because then it's like easier then when making the scenes of what you want your character to do. So you guys are getting super technical now, and that's when I start to get brain melt. Feel free to discuss it amongst yourselves. Games are interesting, that's for sure. And as for MOBAs, I've never even played one in my life. Are you shocked, chat? Never touched a MOBA game before. Mainly because I think I'd be terrible at them. Just so we know that she's talking to Rose here. I just put that in on my other monitor? Another tab. Oh my gosh, guys, I've said loads since I last checked chat. It's really just an idea of what the developer thinks the audience will find more interesting. I think it's about what the developer wants to do. Screw the audience, do the game you want to do, I say. Nah, I mean, to a certain degree you do have to think about what the audience want. But I think it's people are too much like that nowadays, and it's all very money grabbing. I miss it when games were made from the heart. I mean, that still exists, but mainly within the indie bracket. Now, need Rose. Now we've got Tall Sprite Rose in. I might need to open up RPG Maker actually, because I'm looking at this draft that I've got of this scene, and I remember there was a few additions I made to the scene actually, so I'm gonna have to get that up to see what they were. Cyberpunk is based, yeah. Everything's inspired by something to a certain degree. Problem is, large developers have to make money for their investors, so they are forced to do things that are relatable. Yeah, and that's a sad life. Sad. But I say that as a non-capitalist. I would say that. My old project file open, so let's open the new one. It bothers me a lot, to be honest, that people see the indie bracket of gaming as bottom of the barrel. As in how, sort of? As thinking that the games aren't as good quality, you mean, as AAA? Is that what you mean? And in all honesty, screw those people if they've got that opinion, because they're missing out on a ton of hidden gems. And it's not all about the fancy visuals and most newest mechanics and it being all shiny. It's like, who gives a damn, right? Just, it's about the experience, and sometimes indie games can really give an experience that AAA lack. And don't get me wrong, like, there's some amazing AAA games out there, but that doesn't mean indie games can't also be good in their own way too. I mean, look at Undertale. Very, very, basic visuals, really, but look how wonderful the game is. And many others too. And, do you plan on using dialogue tags in the game? Things like she growled or she teased? Or is everything in dialogue boxes strictly being said? Everything's said as actual dialogue. So it's not going to be like a novel or anything like that. It's not going to be in the style of Baldur's Gate, or, you know, where they've got like it almost written like a novel. It's all just, you know, your standard dialogue boxes of speech. And I've got movement in here for the sake of just for the sake of knowing how to direct the scene when the time comes to doing the scene work, because when it comes to scenes, they're not all just talking heads, right, where one dialogue box comes up after another, that there's character movement going on to break up the pacing and all sorts. So I guess I'm writing it sort of like a script. I'm trying in my own unique weird way, I guess, so that the scene side of things will come a little bit easier. Oh yeah, Dave, thinking about it, now you're talking about all that stuff, it's reminded me, you started streaming tabletop, haven't you? I swear I read something when I was half asleep the other night that you were, and I can't remember if I was dreaming or not. I was like, is Dave really streaming now, or was that a dream? A dream of me looking at Twitter? Has anyone ever been like that? They've not known what was real or what was a dream. What are we dreaming about? I dream about everyone. That's what dreams are, right? Just a mix of all the people in your life doing weird things, really random things. I dream all the time that I've looked at Twitter and I've thought something was real. Someone posted a tweet, but it wasn't. It never existed. And I'm like, oh, must have been a dream. That's what I thought, just wanted to confirm my assumption was right. Yeah, I mean, all these questions will probably get answered more clearly when we got a first playable build out, because then you guys will see the style that we're sticking to. We do have screenshots up on the main website and on the press kit right now, but these screenshots do need an overhaul because we've recently switched from small to tall sprites, so I would really like the newer, taller sprites on the current screenshots. But because we're in such an early pre-alpha, and I'm very passionate in a way now of eventually getting away from the default assets that exist all over the internet in regards to some of the environment tiles. That could over time be updated in general and overhauled. Certain the screenshots as we go through the builds, but it's all going to be a slow pace and a gradual thing, because things like that can't be changed overnight. But I'm glad we're back to tiles now, because if I ever did do an overhaul of any of the particular little visuals, like similar to how we did with the characters but except for environment, it's an easy switch, because tiles, you just do them and it updates automatically, unlike parallax mapping, which I would have had to have been redone again. And Rose dreams about all of her chat playing TTRPGs. True story, she dreams about me giving econ lectures at least twice a week. And who knows, my dreams can be a bit wacky, but then I end up forgetting them after like 10 minutes of being awake most of the time. So what does Rose do in this scene? What I was going to do, I was going to look at the updates, because I realised that I'd made changes, didn't I? I always forget what I'm doing when I'm streaming. That's why things like this I do at a much slower pace than if I was to do them off stream. I'd already finished the scene now if I was doing this off stream. But it's a nice chill thing to do on stream. Okay, so now I always wondered about the son of the bucket thing, because like I said, it's one of the purpose of getting all these flowers back in dialogue trees was to analyse what the characters say and make sure it's all consistent with them. Son of a bucket is a wonderful expression, right? I love it for a barrel, but would Carol be the sort of barrel that would say son of a bucket? I actually imagine Hank would, more than anybody, just because it seems like something that would come out of his mouth. Carol's very I'm just wondering if it would even suit Carol to say it. And I'm thinking if there's an alternative way for Carol to express surprise that's more in character. Not that that doesn't work. I'm up for debate whether it does or doesn't, but I'm just trying to ensure that it's the right choice for Carol, judging by what we know of her so far and what we've written here. Yeah, let me read what chat says. I've already read a bit of it, but let's read it all properly. Oh, so your dreams are bizarre and uncomfortable. Yeah, dreams are weird. I want nice dreams, but I don't have nice dreams enough. In the Discord somewhere, I have a blurb explaining how banknotes were invented and how that connects to using raindrops as a world currency. And I wouldn't mind playing some TTRPGs with Rose someday. Yeah, and I'm a massive noob, aren't I, Dave? I'm a noob. I'm noob at tabletop RPGs, but they're fun. I'm also only able to dream like a few times a month. Yeah, I don't dream as often as most people, actually. I think Carol would be even cheekier. I agree. That's why I wanted to point it out to you guys, because I looked at it, because I want us to make sure this scene's like perfected. That's why we're going over the dialogue again. And looking in it, I was like, would Carol say something like that? And I think we only added son of a bucket because we just love the expression so much, because it's a great expression for a barrel. To say something like that, but we have to use it with the right character. And now we've made the most common phrases box for each of the container characters. I feel like that should be something we should add to the appropriate character. And I think the reason I say Hank is because it's more of an old man expression, isn't it? Something like that, rather than a Sunday hot-headed lady expression. Maybe son of a drum, because Alvira hates oil drums and that trickled down to her grandchildren. Yeah, Alvira blooming does hate the oil drum. She hates anything that's not it's weird with the difference with Alvira and Carol. Their xenophobia is different, you know. Alvira is your typical boomer, right? Or would you say the generation above boomer? I don't know. Whereas Carol's disdain for non-barrels is more because of trauma, but that could easily be healed over time when Carol learns that she can get belonging with others, you know, that other humans are actually going to be very, very accepting of her of who she is a barrel during the course of the tale. She will discover that if he plays a good hero, of course. If he plays a good one. Hi Rex, how are you doing? And so we got Son of a Drum, Bursting Bands. I would love for Carol to tell Rose to kick their cask. That's a good one. And I dream every night and daydream in the daytime if I am not focused on such stuff. You dream every night? I'm jealous. I want to dream every night. I love the insults that are linked to barrel parts. That's for sure. But, you know, some barrels, somebody like Alvira and Hank, I think, could be far more articulate and a little bit more fancy with their expressions and wording. If anyone's going to use fancy expressions and phrases, it would probably be them. I mean, Alvira's very sharp-witted, so probably her. She'd be the likely one to say all those sorts of things. But somebody like Carol, like we said, she doesn't have the biggest vocabulary in the world. She probably would not use words that are more fancy. So in regards to that, I think her insult here would be more blunt and a little bit more hostile as well. I love the Son of a Drum insult. I think that needs to be at least recorded and written down, because I think it's great. Son of a Drum, just because we've got Axel. Axel's a character in the game, so that's a good one. Yeah, same, kindled 5 times a month. I remember some of my dreams in the morning when I wake up. Do you have scary dreams, Van? As a mother, she may use older person slang because she was constantly centering herself around Oliver, and that's why she used son of a basket instead of. Yeah. So one thing about Carol, which we kind of learned I crossed the tab off now, unfortunately, but in the flashback, oh, here it is, it's right here. One thing we learned about Carol from the flashback scene is she's a lot more softer when she speaks with Oliver. I mean, she said the word dear. That is not very Carol-like, the Carol that we know anyway. But it's Oliver. You know, she is a lot softer when she talks to Oliver than she would be if she talked to any of the others. In fact, I think she'd avoid using language altogether around Oliver. And I think she'd just very, very much be a different person. She's very protective. That was one trait we had of her here. We've got her down as protective because we said Carol can't be all bad. She can't be all loud, hostile, blunt, impatient, arrogant, bossy, because these are very negative traits. And she is still an endearing Sunday deep down. And we figured that we need to look at Carol positively too. And one thing she clearly is protective. She shows that very much when Meryl tells Oliver a scary story, because Meryl's very, very playful, and she's different to Carol. Meryl's far more playful and teasing like in her banter, whereas Carol's very serious as a person. And she's protective of Oliver here. She's like, cut it out, sis, stop frightening my son. So that's one thing she clearly is. And she could even be protective of us. Can you believe it? If she was protective of us in the future. She hates us now, but one day she might be. How wholesome if she was. That would be a real turning point. She's honest, because people like her who are blunt generally are very honest. And sometimes it can be bad, but in other ways it can be very good to have someone honest. And she's very principled. She's got very high morals. She has high expectations of others and how people should behave. So yeah, we're getting the good sides out of Carol a bit here. And I think if we had a good hero, if we went down the good hero route, you're going to see those traits even more. And if you go down a bad hero route, you're more likely going to see them taken to the extreme. It's because you moulding your hero, the way you mould your hero will bring out the black and white in different NPCs' personalities. So if you're the sort of, you might bring out the black side of Carol and you might bring out the white, like, morally. And same with the others. With Elvira probably has some good sides in her too. Even though she seems to be a despicable character, she's got to have good points. And I think, Elvira's ways, it's just her being just extremely traditional and set in her ways more than being just pure horrible. I don't think she is horrible. She's good, for sure. But she's just very set in her ways, and she just has a lot of learning to do about the real world and people. And she needs to stop being so narrow-minded. I think she could go on an interesting character arc. I don't have scary dreams. I live through nightmares, so my dreams can't be any worse. I'm glad you're in a better spot now, Dave. I much prefer someone blunt over honest, over beating around the bush and not wanting to say how you feel. See, this is why Carol's could be absolutely lovable to many, because she don't hold back. And some people might find that a bit rude even, but others could admire it, and I guess it all depends, doesn't it? She's a very complicated being. All right. So yes, we were kind of thinking, what would she say? And judging by, oh my gosh, all the tabs. We've already like written some of the things that she tends to say a lot. She's very, as you can see, she's very short in the way she expresses herself. So, shut your yap. That was one from last time that we liked. Shut your cork hole is a good one, but that's for a barrel. That's for someone to say to Carol herself. Yeah, it's a difficult one with the insult. You'd think it'd be easy to think of something like a replacement for that. But it isn't actually that easy at all, because especially when you're very fussy about character voice being distinct and consistent. It can be very, you can find yourself really analysing things like that. We did have Son of a Drum. I do think out the two, Drum's better than Bucket, because it just seems a little bit more, I know, Bucket just seems more Hank. It's hard to explain why. And I also like the reference to Axel there as well. And I think it's pretty clear that Carol doesn't like Axel. There's evidence of that here. Because when Meryl says it's the truth, Axel told me, Carol says, and walks away. So she clearly doesn't approve of Axel. I don't think Carol would like many people. You know, even Barrels she wouldn't get on with. I don't think she really gets on with Meryl that well, but I think it's one of those things, typical sisterly relationship where they fight, but there's still affection deep down. Okay, so we'll have some of a Son of a Drum for now, but I'd still really like to think about really good expressions that, you know, have a good think about it and at least note them down for the future as well. Okay, so let me open what happens next. So Son of a Bucket, look over there. A wee Cruncher, get over there and paint a picture of who took my Ollie. So Crunch is a nickname she gives Rose, like, because Rose is a vampire. And I guess it's now a set in stone slur. Slur might be a bit extreme, but it's definitely a nickname that vampires are given in this world. And I can imagine there'd be a number of nicknames vampires would be given. Parasite is another, but Parasite is very strong, I feel, and I feel like certain people would use that, maybe not Carol. So now Rose hesitates. That's what's going to happen here, because originally we had her just walk straight up to the painting and the easel under the painting, but we says we need to show some hesitation, because nobody does what someone tells them to, you know. And Rose is an interesting character who's got her own sort of thoughts that we don't even know because she doesn't speak, but it's nice to keep her mysterious and make you wonder what she's entirely thinking from time to time. If she just walked up to the painting immediately without any questions. She'd almost come across as a people pleaser. And although there might be a bit of that within her, I don't think it should be too much, too people pleasing. So that's why we're having a tiny bit of hesitation from her, but she will do it in the end. I just wanted to show the hesitation to a certain degree. So this is just, again, another way to have Carol get aggressive. So yeah, she faces away from Carol, and I think I directed the scene that way so we could put a sort of expression on her face and let the player see it, because if she was facing Carol, you'd just see the back of her head. But this is just an opportunity to show the expression on her face. So shows hesitation, because Rose doesn't speak, so she, out of any character, needs to show her expressions most of all. And I don't know if this helps, but slang and idioms are learned since there's, so far as we know, no thriving barrel culture. Most of the slang they use should be similar and standardised, since there was a school where Carol could be exposed to other slang. She'd have only heard what her parents and grandparents have said, but I don't know. I'm not an expert. That's a very good point as well. And although, there's going to be a lot of barrel life and their life that isn't entirely 100% fleshed out, there'll still be events that we don't know altogether. It makes sense that, they've learned from their parents and their phrases. So we naturally, or like anything that she'd have overheard in her life from her parents, the other barrels, Woody, whoever, or even the humans are like fallen wagon riders, should I say. Like she'll have overheard a lot of interactions with. As a barrel, she sits there alone, has had to put up with listening to conversations many times, most likely. The event, for example, the festival in Lightfall, where we said there's going to be a buffet of loads of food and fruit, the time when her parents die, from Carol's past that we were talking about earlier in stream. She is actually going to be a stand for the mayor of Lightfall. And he uses her as the stand or something, the podium. So things like that, being a barrel and having you have to listen to a lot of people ramble on. So she could have picked up things along the way. So that's interesting to think about. And on the flip side, the barrels could be intentionally trying to make barrel-related idioms to establish an identity for themselves. Yeah, and I love the idea of having barrel phrases and barrel expressions, because they're funny too. It's entertainment value and it's endearing. So if anyone does come up with any, just throw them in chat, and I always read through the VODs after the stream to make notes of any cool things that were mentioned. So over time I'll make a collection of any barrel-like phrases and things, and we can assign them to certain barrel characters that we feel would most likely say them, because it's a good thing to kind of expand on that. They're not gonna ever say, for example, I don't know, something like "Oh Jesus," because that's Christianity, so certain expressions will not be said because it would make sense in the world of Raindrop Chronicles. People have got their own beliefs, their own religions, their own cultures, and that's why I says I want to have a religion stream in the near future, where we talk about the gods of the world. We know that stars are gods in this world, and there are a few bits and pieces that I'm working on in regards to that as well, but there's still that have already been fleshed out, but there's still a lot that hasn't been fleshed out there yet as well. But the flashback with the barrels very much foreshadows all that. All the talk at the start with Oliver, the stars in the sky, and Carol's little nursery fairy tale to Oliver, and then Meryl's very scary tale that Axel told her, and then later on we had Hank's more truthful and wise tale of the real reality of stars. Those 3 different tales and myths, for example, could foreshadow the religion and some of the gods of our world, and I would like to do a lore Bible entry for them eventually. So yes, stars are gods here. So interesting, right? Because Meryl has already referenced the sun and the moon, and it is obviously a very far-fetched tale that's been exaggerated and twisted by Axel, but it's an interesting thing for sure. So I think we can pretty much clear it up that the sun and moon are like the key ones here. Well done. So, sun and moon, if sun and moon are really key religious themes in the world of Raindrop Chronicles, I mean, there's probably others too. Sun and moon are just two key star elements, aren't they? And that have already been established. Naturally, language and expressions could come from them. So, like in Christianity, we've got Jesus Christ and those kind of things people exclaim when they're angry. Oh my God, and things like that. And I'm sure there's even more. But, they could be turned into something that links with the whole stars aspect of our world in language. And certain language will suit some characters better. Some just would sound weird if one character said it, because they're not that kind of person, but it'd be perfect for other characters. Almost made a religion joke. So you petitioned to have Jesus to be a paid DLC. All we need to do is be able to mod the game. Oh my goodness. And like how a lot of games say, what on earth, except they're not on Earth, they're on their own planet. Yeah, so that's another thing to think about. We haven't even named the world of Raindrop Chronicles. Yeah, I've avoided doing that on purpose. We don't have a name for the actual world yet, because I want us to wait a bit longer till we've fully set in stone some lore, because who knows, we could have really like fleshed out the gods of the world and religion, and then there's the perfect name there right in front of us, so I'm kind of waiting, and it's just an unnamed world at this point in time. I did have a few name suggestions for the world, so I'm going to keep those in mind, and who knows, when the time comes something might work well. And oh my aching oaks, you can keep that one. Hi everyone. Hi Shaskowski, how you got doing? Yeah, that I could imagine. I mean, the Lakefall NPCs, for example, we haven't really fleshed them out yet. We already have Nigel and Fiona, the brother and sister that work in the inn. Fiona's a really brave, young, headstrong girl, whereas Nigel's a very cowardly, timidly older brother, and he's very, very like eloquent and overly polite with the way he speaks, so I could imagine him saying something like that, for sure. They clearly mean Earth is in soil, what on the ground. Yeah, that's the thing. Earth also does mean soil, doesn't it? But it's also a planet name, so you have got to be careful, like as a writer, to not accidentally, without thinking, reference something that's not even a part of your world, because it's so easily done. because you gotta really, you know, people, us writers and that, we're very much ingrained with earth culture and our life and ways of living, that it can accidentally trickle through in works of fiction when it's not actually meant to be in it or doesn't make sense to be in. So always we've got to be careful. But the ocean should be important too. It's that interaction of the sun and the ocean which creates clouds. Yeah, I mean, it can be a bit overwhelming to think every aspect of geography and things and get all like educated on it, but I do think to a certain degree it can be interesting to consider, for sure. But let's not forget, this is a fantasy story, so like we don't have to get super like technical about, like, the one thing about the difference with sci-fi and fantasy I've always felt with sci-fi, it's usually hard, some of it's hard sci-fi, so yeah, it has to be like, so you have to really educate yourself on matters and make sure it 100% lines up and everything makes sense. But with fantasy, because it tends to be a bit more magical and a bit more, you know, people tend to use, oh, magic, it's like that because of magic, or it's like that, and it's an easy way to not have to like consider every aspect of world building to a really advanced degree, you know, and that kind of takes a weight off fantasy writers' shoulders, for sure, because it can be a bit overwhelming to have to think that you've got to research everything and turn into a professor or something. But, you know, I think it's good too, but at the same time, you know, there's a lot there and you could drive yourself a bit bonkers. But didn't you want to go with Poured? No, that's Raindrop Backwards, isn't it? That was a great one, for sure. It's one of the high contenders at the moment, Dave. One of the leading contenders. Because we haven't got any other suggestion yet, and it is pretty funny. Raindrop Backwards. Once Rose sells to EA, you won't need to mod the game. Everything you could possibly want will be microtransactions. Zexay is saying something that I would never do in a million years, and he'd know it. I will sell my animals before I sell to EA, and I don't even have any animals, but you know, it's, yeah. And yeah, progress, it's come along. Rose, peek at our chat, I sent you something, I'll have a look, Van, for sure. I've got to get it, I'm scared it'll accidentally show on stream. I'd have to get it up in another window because it can't be shown on the stream yet, but I'll have a peek, give me a mind. And that's why everyone makes fantasy, yeah, it's easy writing because you don't need to use anything in our world. And is anyone having a lot of drop frames on Twitch? Is the stream okay, folks? Is it Twitch's end or my end? Nothing's come up saying there's an issue. Sound is fine, but the video is cutting out. Is it Twitch's fault or mine? I hope it's not mine, because I'd be devastated. Nothing's even come up saying I've got drop frames on my end, but... And it looks all good here, but I don't know. I always get worried when techie things are mentioned like that, because I've had such headaches in the past regarding, you know, my stream, and I've had to like pay out on very expensive equipment to fix it, so I always get worried because I've already paid so much. Thanks, the video is really flipping out for me. I have seen no drop frames. So if it's on Twitch's end, then please be on Twitch's end, because I don't want it to be on mine, because it's yeah, streaming is stressful and expensive. But let me know, guys, because of course if there is an issue, I want it to be fixed. Okay. But yeah, you know, like it says, what's your opinion on that, chat? Like, you know, when you write fantasy stories, do you believe that they should be 100%, every aspect of world building needs to be carefully considered so it all makes sense? Or are you more of a person who, who thinks, no, you know, it's fantasy. Doesn't have to make complete sense, geography or scientifically all the time. I mean, I'm kind of 50-50. I kind of think it's good to consider, and realism can be good, but also don't get your pants in a twist about it either. If something doesn't connect with the fantasy world you're envisioning, then just do it your way, right? Okay, let's make this box smaller. I only write fantasy in the context of TTRPGs these days, so my answer is rooted in that. I add enough detail to get the ball rolling and fill in the gaps as they come up, yeah. And most things don't make sense in fantasy because everything's explained with magic, but the best stories are the ones where things follow the rules set by the world, yeah. I think as long as it fits with your world building, that's what matters. Not necessarily planet Earth. Just don't let it contradict with the world you've made, is the key, I kind of think, too. Oh yeah, Van told me to check something, one sec. Oh my goodness, Van. I'm going to message you after stream. So keep an eye out if you're there, if you can hear me, that is. Because you might not even be able to. But once I've had my dinner, keep an eye, because I know you don't get pinged for some reason by Discord, so expect a message from me. I'm excited. Okay, and oh, I'll read that as well after stream as well, Zex. You got a lot to do today. I'm excited to read that because I think it'll lead to good things. Like I said, I always like to can really get in depth with the characters' internal thoughts and their way they're behaving and why they do certain things, and anything that involves fleshing out characters is really fun. I've really enjoyed the last few weeks of really thinking deep in Carol and why she joins the hero in the first place. It makes the story far more interesting to think of those things. Everyone in the world has a limit except the generic male protagonist who has no limits and breaks everything in the world. LOL. Mary Sue, that is. Anyone who can have no limits and break everything. Okay, so next part. Now, it's all been very slow getting this scene done today. But that's because we spent the first half of the stream really talking about the other scenes. So we didn't really get a chance to get started with the fruit scene as much as we wanted. But no worries, because we'll carry on with them next time. So, the next part would be... Now, originally I actually said Rose looks angry here because she's just fed up at Carol's demands. And because she can't speak and say anything, all she has is the angry look on her face to show that. But she's a vampire and she can't do much to Carol because there's no blood to get out of her. Like, if Rose got annoyed at someone or someone crossed her, because she's very violent as a feral vampire, she could just bite them and hurt them a little bit. But that's one thing, you know, Carol knows that she can get away with vampires because they can't do anything to hurt her. If they bit Carol, all they'd get is splinters in their teeth. It wouldn't be a pleasant experience for a vampire. So she's got the sass more than ever with Rose because she knows she can't hurt her. Splinters wouldn't be nice, right? So that's an interesting thing to think about as well, like the dynamic between Carol and Rose. The fact that what I just mentioned about Rose not being able to really cause harm to Carol, and Carol knowing that. And here to help or distract depends on how much coffee I have. Yay. And hi Met, how are you doing? It can be good to have magic that follows some kind of metaphor rather than hard magic rules, but then you have to be careful to have the metaphor itself make sense and make sure things aren't too jarring if context makes a different one more relevant. Yeah. So I think honestly, like if something really works and you're like, oh yeah, then, and it only makes your story or world even better and stronger, then totally, it can be interesting. But if it's going to do the opposite and make your world not make sense or ruin some of the ideas you've had, then it doesn't hurt to kind of not have that as a thing in a fantasy story, right? And Rose rolling Carol to a butcher to fill her with blood so she has something to drink out of her. Rose could also just smash Carol under her feet. Yeah, that's true. Like, you can just break a barrel with physical strength. Like, that's always a thing to, and as someone violent, she could totally do that. I think the thing with Carol, like, we got to think from her head, like, why is she risking that? Like, why is she so happy to be so sassy and know that if she annoys people so much that they wouldn't just break her? I mean, she's seen it enough. She's had the threat. She's seen humans do that to barrels in her life. So maybe it just got to the point that she's just so sick of things now that she's just angry for the sake of being angry. But is that really the truth? Because Rose still has all the human utilities. Why can't she just jump on the barrel like the kid? Yeah, basically what Kindle says is what Van is saying, which is what I said. It's getting into Carol's, because Carol is sassy, Carol is angry and hostile, and we're not going to just say, okay, then we'll make Carol be nice because she's too scared to getting broke. That ruins the character. We're having her be our angry Sunday no matter what. So we just need to have a good reason for why she's angry and explain that in other ways rather than changing her behaviour because of the risks. One of the bad endings in episode 93 is Carol bleeding out and Rose throws a fit because she's assumed that barrels don't have blood and she could have sucked Carol dry years ago. Lol. I want to see the fan fiction now. Reading that's made me want fan fiction. Carol's just suicidal, poking the tiger. Oh, yeah, that's the thing, like, because it can be, like, legit that people are just so fed up of life and their experiences that they've just had enough. They lose patience, then they're like, screw this, I'm just gonna lash out at everyone I can because of the stuff that's happened to them. The frustration they've experienced has just made them run out of complete patience. Maybe Carol doesn't even care about her own life anymore. I mean, she's very determined to find Oliver and make sure he's protected, and I suppose that's the reason why she'd want to live. But she's also extremely impatient by nature, and the fact that she's seen a method, a way for her to find something out, this easel, a way for Rose to tell her what she knows, it's made Carol just so desperate at this point in time, and she's not going to have anything any other way because she knows that this is what she needs to find out what she needs to know, and Rose is the only one that can give that to her. And maybe Carol recognises that Rose is not good with social things, so it makes it easy for Carol to bully her. That's a good point too. Maybe she's recognised that Rose is quite passive and potentially a people pleaser, because she is. Rose is a conflicted character. She's conflicted between pleasing people and getting validation of acceptance. Because as a vampire, she feels like an outsider, so she does want to be accepted to make her feel like she belongs. So she's experiencing that, the desire to fit in and please, with her feral instincts and nature that are also coming out of her at the same time, because obviously turning into a vampire has made her feral and animalistic, so she's kind of she's going through this conflict there. But she definitely is somewhat passive and people pleasing, and probably very easy for someone like Carol to bully. Is someone that can't really speak their mind. I mean, Rose can't speak her mind because she can't talk. But Carol does speak her mind, so you've got two complete opposites there. Someone that's unable to speak their mind and someone who just does. So yeah, perfect bullying material for Carol. I think that's a very believable thing with the two cats. I think it's really interesting to talk about this stuff, like the relationship between the two of them, like what Carol thinks about Rose, what Rose thinks about Carol, why the clash, and why they behave with each other the way that they do. Because this is this whole quest is very Carol and Rose focused, being that they're the two characters with us at this point in time. They're the ones that naturally are interacting with each other, and their story connects as well. In some occult superstitions, supernatural creatures are repelled by types of plants. So maybe Carol is made of a type of wood that vampires can't interact with. Interesting. So, for sure, the fact that she's not fleshy and lacks the blood, I know that we had the blood joke, but it naturally just makes her feel like she's a little bit, Rose Rose can't do anything to her really. But yeah, it is true, she can smash her, that is very true. But Carol, something is telling Carol that Rose wouldn't do that. Maybe it's good to think about how Carol knows that Rose wouldn't do that. If there's something very clear to Carol that she knows Rose wouldn't dare smash her, maybe we could emphasise Rose's people-pleasing ways a little bit more. Like, Rose is very much willing to do this painting for Carol. She does show the hesitation, but then she eventually does do it. But the hesitation's also there for tension for us as the audience, because it's got to make us think, well, why is Rose hesitating? Does she know something about the barrels and what's happened to them? And is she hesitating because of she knows that she can't do anything to help? Or all sorts of stuff could be going through our mind why Rose might be hesitating. Now, there could be many reasons why she'd hesitate. And depending on when Asharu meets Carol, I don't know if he'd put up with Carol's BS, lol. He definitely wouldn't allow her to bully him. I think those two would be a very interesting dynamic as well. I love everybody to think about how their character would feel about Carol, actually. I think that's something for you all to think about, because everybody at some point, whenever you come into the game, you're going to meet Carol, that's for sure, because she's the hero's inventory. So she's going to be there tagging along, and Carol of all people is going to have a dynamic with all the characters. Everyone is key in the story, especially the party members, because that's who she's kind of communicating with most. But yes, Asharu seems to have a bit of an ego himself, and he's a very proud person. So I think him and Carol have more in common than one would think. They're both very proud. They're both principled and, have high morals. They're both probably quite blunt and straightforward, maybe. But, they're also very different. Like, Ashari's probably got way more composure and ability to control his emotions than Carol has. Carol doesn't have much emotional regulation. She freaks out at anything. Is Carol still showing up at the end of the flashback after the Barrels are kidnapped? If so, maybe she saw how Rose acted and that made her think Rose is violence avoidant. Let's read that again. So, is Rose showing up at the end of the flashback? Yes. So, in the flashback where the Barrels are having their lovely chat in the wagon, and we get to know them a bit, and they talk about stars, and we find out about Axel, and Oliver asks questions and he's being all cute. Eventually, the hijacking happens. Carol rolls out. Unfortunately, Hank gets injured in the process when he's trying to protect the beautiful ceramic cookie jar Oliver from getting smashed. He gets hurt and Carol rolls out, and that's the moment Rose appears. Carol's outside on the ground after rolling out the wagon, and he kind of rides off. The hijacker takes it and Carol's just left behind outside. But before that happened, while the wagon's going across, Rose is walking across the sidewalk. She sees the original wagon rider dead on the ground. And you actually see as she's walking, he's in front of her because the killer, the one that hijacked the wagon, like his body just lands on the ground in front of Rose, and she sees it. She looks really sad about the fact someone's died and someone's been murdered, and then she gets really angry and she jumps on the wagon on the top of it and then jumps down and bites the hijacker, and he screams. And Carol's there, watching all this in the distance. She's on the ground where she landed with a thud, and she saw it all happen. So she's very, very aware that Rose knows exactly who that hijacker is, and that's really what her motive is in this scene, because she wants to know who it is, and it's going to eventually lead to Rose doing a painting of the hijacker, which is a reptile, by the way, and that will then lead to main quest 3, where we are seeking out where the reptiles are living in the cave. So it will all lead to that. Then it'll all bring in the reptile side of the plot at that point, because the first couple of main quests are more about the threat of things coming to life in the forest, and that's kind of really what the first third is about, the introduction. But then once we've killed the fruits and we've done this painting and we return to Lakefall for the second time, that's when the second threat is introduced, the reptiles, and we find out more about them then and all that. So, and let's actually read, because I'm rambling on about things and not actually answering the questions. So, and if so, maybe she saw how Rose acted, and that made her think Rose is violent avoidant. So she did see her taking a real chunk out of that hijacker, that's for sure. So she knows she's actually the opposite of violent avoidant. But Rose is very complicated, because as we know from her profile, she only hurts and kills certain people. She doesn't want to kill innocents, and she kind of only kills what's necessary for a survival, or bandits, or or people she deems as bad people. So it's a very interesting one, but ultimately Carol has to be mean to Rose and be demanding, because she's not gonna have that, she's not gonna be nice. That's not Carol. But we did write this. We should read this out actually to just remind ourselves what the scene card said. She could have watched Rose enough to know she's timid and she's not properly threatened, but chalks up to being too feral to actually be hateful. Yeah, so that's for sure, because there is obviously we met Rose in the cage when she was captured with Fiona Buckington. If we wanted to filter through a bit of Rose sort of behaviour in there that clues Carol in on things, we could, but also Carol can't be in the cabin, I've just realised, because Fiona Buckington's in there, and obviously Carol wouldn't want to reveal herself to Fiona. So yeah, she might have not really witnessed the goings on in the cabin, but she's certainly seen Rose since when she's joined the party as we're about to sacrifice her to the fruits. But I think, yeah, ultimately she realises Rose is weak in her mind, and wants to people please, so she's very kind of aware of that. She gathers that she's easy bullying material for her. And so between seeing Rose at the scene of the crime and maybe some dialogue from Fiona about how easy Rose is to capture leads Carol to realise Rose isn't a threat to her. That's true as well. Sneaky things like that, about how she was easy to capture, because a little bit of dialogue like that is just so small to just put in, but it's something that could just really kind of be what all Carol needs to know, that Rose is weak. And she's getting these assumptions of Rose now that she's no threat. But we'll review the Rose and Carol dialogue in that first scene of Main Quest 2 in a bit, because I want to see that. But so before this scene, Carol didn't care about Rose. She would have been glad to see her sacrificed to the monsters of Everbloom Forest. But Carol realises she needs Rose, though it's for selfish reasons. It's a step up from not caring at all what happens to Rose. But she's only nice to Rose in this scene because she needs her to do the painting, basically. Because when the fruits interrupt them, the fruits make it clear that they need Rose's blood and they need her to be sacrificed to them. So Carol panics because she's like, but you can't have her because she needs to do this painting for me, basically. That's what's going on in Carol's mind at this point in time. So she is kind of protective of Rose, but for selfish reasons here. But we'll have to get the rest of that scene in so we can fully see all that taking place next time. Because we haven't even done the fruit introduction yet, but it's coming up. So the very first interaction with Carol and Rose is this. So they're walking along and Carol's like, stand still and look at me, Cruncher, and Rose looks at her, and then Carol recognises her. She jumps in surprise and says, "Is it you?" Rose looks shocked. So us as the audience here, we don't have a clue what's going on at this point, but we realise that the two characters recognise each other and have a connection. That's pretty obvious at that point. And this is when Carol says that she's seen Rose before. And we have a choice at that point what to do. Carol says here that she's not scared of either of you flashbacks, especially not her. So Carol's made it clear that she finds Rose even less of a threat to her than the hero. She sees her as just weak and like no threat at all from that. Like, that makes it clear she sees her as no threat, and that's why she's so sassy and so mean. But yet Rose is very angry and feral. So Carol, why do you think? Why aren't you scared of her, Carol? That's what I want to know, because you should be. Rose, me, she's a threat for sure. And that's when she like jokes about put the teeth away, you don't want splinters in your pretty lips, and that's it. So she just like really mocks her really for being like a cruncher. A cruncher is no threat to her. That's how she sees it so far. But we can totally go more into depth of this Carol and Rose dynamic for sure. We can totally add more layers. So, how ironic, the object's treating Rose like an object, yeah, like why we need to be shown in the game that Rose isn't threatening, yeah. So I think the cabin scene when Fiona has her capture, like Zexion said something like that Rose was easy to capture, could be the ideal and easiest time to really show that she wasn't a threat and she's weak and things. And maybe I'm starting to wonder, and I don't know what you guys think, but because we have a lot of angry Rose expressions in now and again, maybe we should hold back on Rose's anger and actually make her a little bit more timid. I'm not sure. Should we have her be a more timid character than she currently is? Because she's a vampire who's trying to not be aggressive deep down. She feels bad for biting people and having to survive from people's blood. She doesn't want to do it. Although she is one and she can do it if she wants to, if she feels angry enough, then, she will. If someone's done something wrong, like murder an innocent person, for example, like the hijacker did, she will do it, especially if she needs to, for her own survival. She'll think, I'd rather do it to someone badger than someone not at all. So she wouldn't hold back completely. But I'm just thinking maybe if we want to sort of make her timidness put a bit more emphasis on it to kind of give reason for why she's being bullied so much by Carol in these couple of scenes. Carol might also be pushing some blame on Rose for not having successfully rescued her family right off the bat, thus treating her badly. Yeah, Carol is really angry at herself for not being capable of saving her family, yeah. For sure, like Carol's got pride and she'd never admit her flaws and her being angry at herself. Not at this early in her character arc anyway. I mean, Carol herself has a lot of growing to do as a character, that's for sure, and it's going to be a real moment when she kind of, her pride, she kind of puts some of that to the side in the future potentially. But that's true as well, that she's angry at Rose as well for being a useless flashback. I mean, she actually calls her a useless flashback here. She left with that wagon. She knows where they are and who took them. But by all mother of things wood, and she can't speak, just Madame look useless flashback. So she's just very angry that the situation's turned out to lead to nothing simply because she can't talk. And if we're all shown is her being feral, angry and killing, then the impression we get is she's very dangerous and there's no reason to go near her. True. Which is why I'm thinking, should we call off on the Rose anger in these very early episode 1 scenes? I mean, part of Rose's character arc could go from being timid to strong and fearsome. She could start off weak but grow into a fearsome vampire throughout the arc. Like at the beginning of the game, we got to remember that these characters, their flaws are here more than ever at day 1 because they've got a lot of growing to do. They can't be perfect or strong early on, because then we allow more room for that character arc for growth if we make them a little bit more vulnerable. So I'd be willing to do that, because then we can see the difference over time with how Rose changes if we hold back on the anger a little bit. Maybe anger should be frustration. So she isn't angry at the people, she's just frustrated at situations, at the miscommunications, etc. Yeah. So I think if we was to show frustration, we'd have to like be very clear with the emotion on her face, because I do have some head expressions on a Photoshop file. So maybe we don't want the angry face. We just want to change it to a frustrated face, maybe. If we can get a good frustrated expression down. Writing complex characters is easy to see but very difficult to create. Yeah, I think it's a really interesting thing though. I think when it comes to creating complex characters, there is a science behind it and a definite system to follow. And conversations like this can only make them even better. It's easy to make contradicting characters, like Rose is shown dangerous but doesn't attack the party. Yeah, so conflicting characters can also be a challenge as well, because there's a lot to them. But yeah, like, you know, I would be like we say, we need to do a few little changes to just how Rose reacts to certain situations and things that get said, say in the Fiona Buckington dialogue. We can always make a couple of adjustments to kind of just make Rose a little more vulnerable as a character in this quest, because she's a vampire but not a powerful vampire. And writing characters is something I'm very into and want to learn a lot more about. Yeah, for sure. And I think, you know, it's one of those things that you have to master your craft at. It's about practice and just sort of learning that craft, and it's very interesting. And hi Ang, how are you doing? You're really demanding a lot of players in terms of being able to recognise expressions on pixelated faces. Many people, and even more among computer people, struggle with reading expressions. Yeah, it raises a challenge in general as a character that can't talk. She's a mystery to a lot of people, and I think that really is Rose. She's not easy to read. But that's all she can do. The only way she can communicate is through expression, and that is what makes her an enigma. But the painting concept is interesting too, because that could be a potential way for her to continue to communicate. Not just now in this scene, but in the future too, if necessary. Sweat drops, that sort, yeah. And it's like watching a play. When you're farther away, all the characters are small. Pixelate, the expressions and actions need to be bold. Yeah, and I think like the thing with this type of pixel art when it comes to expressions, it's usually quite exaggerated to kind of emphasize, like David says with anime, they have very exaggerated expressions. And there's one scene when Fiona Buckington gets pushed in a lake. Her eyes are literally popping out her head, guys. They're like huge and massive because it's exaggerated. It's kind of how it's done. The distinction between anger and frustration is fairly subtle, I think. Yeah, and it's a challenge to not do an angry vampire. Well, not do a vampire who's biting people as angry. It's a challenge to not write them as an angry character, especially if that's what they're doing in battle. They're biting enemies. They're naturally just angry. Like emotes. Yeah, exactly. Look how tiny the emotes are on Twitch, but how much expression you can get with just a small, 48 by 48 pixel. It can be done. Oh, it's a cool gamer lady digging the pro bun skills. Hi Rogue, welcome back to the stream. I hope you're good. But yeah, it's always a challenge for a character of Rose's nature. Like, other characters can talk through dialogue, and it's a lot easier to know what's on their mind. And they have the addition of expressions too. But with Rose, she doesn't have the the speech. So yeah, she's an enigma, that's for sure. And I hope everyone's doing well. I've really gone over time today because we've really been chatting about cool things to do with the story. If anyone has any thoughts, feel free to say before we finish the stream. We've chatted a lot about Carol today and Rose as characters. It's mainly been about talking about the characters and their development and turning them into believable and realistic characters more than actually doing anything today. But these kind of chats are like really vital, and it's probably one of the main reasons why streaming this is so valuable, because it's that feedback and thoughts and ideas sort of thing going on, whereas like all the actual work is better for me to do off stream because it's easier to focus off stream, right? But the community time and the ideas time and all the discussion, this is why the streams are so valuable. I'm great. Who is Rose? Does she have friends like Blanche, Dorothy and Sophia? How are things, Rogue, though? It's good to see you again. I hope you're having a good Friday. Another way these pixel games show expression is not on the character, but the detailed headshots and visual novel text boxes. Yeah, for sure. Like, it's a lot easier if you've got like a really detailed art style and graphics to pull that off then. But sometimes, sometimes if you can't have that, if you don't have the visuals, or you're very limited, or the style's minimal, you just need good writing, right? Undertale's a very minimal game, but yet they really pull off their characterization very well. So, it can be done. Novels don't even have any pictures. They all just have to rely on the writing to get it across as well. And remember, expressions just aren't on the sprites. There are also expressive portraits as well, and animation. Yes, we've still got the face sets, the avatars. We kind of just thinking about the sprites right now, but we do actually have the faces as well, that's for sure. But I do both. I like to add expression not only to the face set, but to the sprite as well, so that it's consistent with the avatar that's on the face. And we haven't got any thought bubbles in the game just yet, but I was thinking that could be, if we wanted to go down that route, I mean, we'd judge in a future build if it was necessary, and if we felt it was going to add, I'd feel. And that's like the sort of feedback I'll get when I have my alpha testers in the first playable build, because what I'd probably do is write a Google Doc, a little questionnaire with you guys giving your thoughts. Like, I'd say, what did you think about the characters, if, like, things like that. And from the feedback I'd get an idea of anything that needs to be amended or adjusted in that build, and what can come in after. Because, the first playable build is going to just be the base, and it's not going to be a showcase of features and all these things. Like, those are things that would be added if necessary, that to just sort of make the base even better than what it is. And sound effects also help certain sounds project emotions and reactions. Sound effects is great. Music. That's why music is so powerful in video games and music soundtracks. They just, imagine playing a story-driven game or watching a movie without any music on in the background. It'd just be bad. So, I'm very, very interested in music and directing scenes. Like, I'm very, very passionate about that, and actually I've made an iTunes playlist and folders of different moods and styles and settings for the folder of all the music I have for the game, so that I can get the right theme and the right mood and the right feel of what's happening in the scene, and when the music should change to something else because of what's happening as well. So it's all very fascinating. Hi Cosmic, thank you so much for that raid. How are you doing? How was the stream? Tell us how it went. I appreciate it. And are you just focusing on communication and story today? And exactly, there could be a gang to be reckoned with in the realm. Yeah, I mean, we've been because the first playable build is out next year, probably around springtime's the aim for the first playable build, but it's only going to have main quest 1 and 2 out the 6th of the episode. So it's all been about today, the last week or two actually, it's all been about going over main quest 1 and 2's content story wise, and really analysing it and going really in depth with what's happened so far, and making sure that the characters are good and the story makes sense and there's no inconsistencies or anything like that. So it's kind of been about that so far, but unfortunately I have to go, guys, because my dinner's ready. I've never streamed till this time before. I've never streamed till 6:30, so you can tell how much I've enjoyed the conversations today. What colour is Blueberry's hat? I think it's pink, but I don't know for sure. Oh my god, I've got to go. I don't even have time to raid today. I don't even have the fruits on the lava. You'll have to hang on, Van. I'll send you a message after my dinner and I'll tell you the colour of the hat then. Okay, and I was reading the story of the Nutcracker. How you doing? Lovely. That's awesome. Thanks so much for raiding. Unfortunately, I have to go. And I don't like it when I can't raid, but I really don't have a choice. I have to just end stream and run today because my dinner's literally gonna get cold. So we'll raid next time, but thanks so much for hanging out, guys. I have to go now. Appreciate everyone. Thanks for hanging out and for the chats.